The first thing I registered was the smell. That specific, cloying scent of instant noodles and cheap air freshener that had once been the permanent perfume of my cousin's cramped apartment. My eyes snapped open, and I wasn't in my sleek, minimalist high-rise condo. I was on a lumpy, second-hand sofa, my phone in my hand, the screen glowing with a transfer confirmation for $30,000 that my thumb was hovering over the confirm button. The recipient, Leo's university fund. That I snatched my thumb back so fast I nearly dropped the phone. A scream was building in my throat, but I choked it down. The sound of a key scraping in the lock made my blood run cold. I knew that sound. I knew that rhythm. The door swung open, and there he was. Leo. A decade younger, with that earnest, boyish look he used like a weapon. His eyes lit up when he saw me, but I saw the flicker behind them. The calculation. I'd only ever seen it once before, on the day he stole my life, but now it was as clear as if it were tattooed on his forehead. Alara, he said, his voice a practiced blend of affection and desperation. Thank God you're here. I just got the email from the university. The final tuition installment is due today, or I lose my spot. I didn't know who else to call. There it was. The same script. Word for word. I remembered the pressure, the guilt, how I'd emptied my own savings for him. And then 3 months later, when the acceptance letter for the same program arrived in my name, it had been lost in the mail. I found out too late that my own admission had been rescinded for non-payment. He'd taken my spot, my future, and used it to build his perfect life while I was left to scrape together a new one from the ashes. That Leo, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I looked him right in the eye, a cold calm settling over me that I'd never felt before. No. He blinked, stunned. He'd clearly never prepared for that word. What I don't understand. It's just a loan. I'll pay you back, you know me. I'm your favorite cousin. I know you, I said, and the weight of that statement hung in the air. And I said no. His expression flickered. The earnestness warped into something sharper, more impatient. It only lasted a second, but I saw it. He was already strategizing his next move. Okay, he said, holding his hands up in a placating gesture he must have practiced in the mirror. Let's be rational. If I don't get this, I can't go. This is my entire future, Alara. You wouldn't want that on your conscience, would you? My conscience is fine, I said, getting up from the sofa. My legs were shaking, but I forced them to carry me toward the door. Figure it out yourself. I left him standing there, his mouth agape, the beginning of a rehearsed guilt trip dying on his tongue. The first real victory was the simplest. Just walking away. The cold air hit my face as I stumbled out of his building. And for a moment, I thought I might be sick. The city lights blurred around me, the sounds of traffic fading into a dull roar. 10 years. I had lived through 10 years of his success, built on the ruins of my own. I had watched him graduate with honors, land the job I should have had, marry the woman who had been my college roommate. And I had smiled through all of it. I had congratulated him at family dinners while my own career stalled, while my own relationships crumbled, while my mother looked at me with that careful, pitying expression that said she didn't understand what had gone wrong with her daughter. But I understood now. I had been a fool. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. The transfer confirmation was still sitting there, waiting for my thumbprint. $30,000. In my first life, I had sent it without hesitation. I had believed his tears, his promises, his desperate pleas about how this was his one chance. And I had paid for it with everything. My fingers swiped left. Cancelled. The notification vanished, and I felt something loosen in my chest. It wasn't relief. It was rage, cold and sharp, crystallizing in my veins. I walked home in a daze, my mind racing through the fragments of my old life. I remembered the day I had found out. I had gone to the university admissions office, excited to pick up my welcome package, only to be told that my acceptance had been voided. The woman at the desk had been sympathetic but firm. There had been a formal withdrawal request, signed with my name, and a subsequent transfer request designating Leo as the replacement candidate. By the time I had tried to contest it, the damage was done. The spot had been filled. I had called Leo that night, hysterical, demanding to know what had happened. And he had played the perfect part. He had been shocked, appalled, furious on my behalf. He had promised to help me fight it, to talk to the administration, to do whatever it took to clear my name. He had been my ally, my confidant, the one person who seemed to believe in me. He had even let me move in with him while I sorted things out. That it wasn't until a year later, when I stumbled across an old email on his laptop, that I understood. He had forged my signature, submitted the withdrawal request, and then submitted the transfer request with a falsified letter of recommendation from a professor who had never even heard of me. He had built his entire future on my identity, and I had been too blind to see it. The memory made my stomach turn. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, gripping a lamppost to steady myself. People rushed past me, oblivious, their faces blurred in the glow of streetlights. I was alone in a city of millions, trapped in a body that belonged to my past, with a mind that had already lived through the worst of it. That I couldn't tell anyone what had happened. Who would believe me? I would sound insane. But I didn't have to tell them. I just had to make sure it didn't happen again. That my phone buzzed in my hand, and I glanced down. A text from my mother. Dinner tonight at Aunt Sue's. Leo says he has exciting news. Please come, Alara. We haven't seen you in weeks. I almost laughed. Exciting news. He was probably going to announce his admission to the program, his victory lap before the race had even started. In my past life, I had smiled and congratulated him while my own dreams lay bleeding on the floor. Not this time. That I typed a quick response. I'll be there. The dinner was at my aunt's house, a warm, cluttered home that had always felt like a second childhood to me. I remembered running through these halls with Leo when we were kids, playing tag, sharing secrets. It was hard to reconcile that boy with the man he had become, the man who would destroy his own cousin for a chance at glory. I arrived early, before everyone else. My aunt was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove, her back to me. She was a kind woman, soft and a little naive, the kind of person who saw the best in everyone. She was also, I knew, the person who would eventually choose her son over me. Not out of malice, but out of a mother's instinct. Alara, sweetheart, she said, turning to hug me. I'm so glad you came. Leo has been so anxious to talk to you. He said you had a little disagreement. Something like that, I said, forcing a smile. I hope it's nothing serious. You know how much he looks up to you. He's always talking about you, saying how smart you are, how successful you're going to be. I bit my tongue. The irony was so sharp it almost drew blood. Leo arrived a few minutes later, and I watched him work the room. He kissed his mother's cheek, complimented her cooking, made small talk with my uncle. He was charming, effortless, the golden boy. When his eyes met mine, there was a flicker of something dangerous in them. He knew I had refused him, and he was already recalibrating. Alara, he said, crossing the room to stand beside me. I'm glad you're here. I feel like we got off on the wrong foot earlier. Did we? I said, my voice flat. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. I don't know what's gotten into you, but I need you to understand something. This is happening. I'm going to that program, with or without your help. If you want to come along for the ride, great. If not, don't get in my way. My heart pounded in my chest, but I kept my face neutral. What's that supposed to mean? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It means I have a backup plan. I always do. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang, and the rest of my family filtered in. My mother, my other aunt, my grandmother. The room filled with noise and laughter, the familiar chaos of family dinner. Leo slipped away to greet them, leaving me standing alone in the corner. That my mother found me a few minutes later, her hand on my arm. Are you okay, honey? You look pale. I'm fine, I said. Just tired. She studied my face, her brow furrowed. You know you can tell me anything, right? If something's bothering you. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to spill everything, to make her see the monster standing in her nephew's skin. But I knew it wouldn't work. Not yet. Leo had already planted his seeds, and I was the only one who could uproot them. Everything's fine, Mom, I said, giving her hand a squeeze. I promise. Dinner passed in a blur. Leo told his story about the program, about how he had worked so hard to get in, about how excited he was for the future. My family beamed at him, proud and oblivious. I stabbed my food with my fork, barely tasting it. At the end of the meal, Leo stood up, a glass of wine in his hand. I want to thank everyone for their support, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Especially Alara. She's been a rock for me through all of this. My head snapped up. The room was watching him, their faces expectant. I know we've had our differences, he continued, his eyes on me. But I want you to know, I'll never forget what you've done for me. You're like a sister to me. He was setting a trap. I could feel it. He was building a narrative of me as the supportive, selfless cousin. A narrative that would make it that much easier to destroy me. I smiled. It was the most difficult thing I'd ever done. Congratulations, Leo, I said, raising my glass. I'm sure you'll be very successful. The toast was made, the glasses clinked. I excused myself a few minutes later, my hands trembling. I had survived tonight, but the war was just beginning. I stepped out onto the porch, letting the cool night air wash over me. My phone buzzed. A notification from my university portal. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. Dear Alara, we have received a formal request to withdraw your application to the graduate program. Please confirm this action by replying to this email or contacting the administration office by close of business tomorrow. We regret to inform you that failure to respond will result in automatic processing of the withdrawal. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. He had already started. The email request had been submitted with a timestamp of 2 hours ago, while I was sitting at the dinner table, pretending everything was fine. I scrolled down to the bottom. The request had been initiated from an IP address I recognized. Leo's apartment. A sound escaped my throat, a mix of a laugh and a sob. He had moved fast. But I had moved faster. That afternoon, right after I left his place, I had gone to the administration office. I had spoken to Mrs. Albright in person. I had confirmed my enrollment. I had paid the deposit. The email was his first attack, but my defenses were already up. I typed a quick reply. This request was not authorized by me. Please ignore and mark my file accordingly. Then I opened my contacts and found Leo's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. The urge to confront him, to scream at him, was overwhelming. But I stopped myself. Confrontation would only make him more careful. I needed him to keep making mistakes. I put the phone away and walked back inside. My mother was waiting by the door, her coat on. Ready to go. She asked. I nodded, but before I left I caught Leo's eye. He was watching me from across the room, a faint smile on his face. He thought he had one. He thought I was still the same oblivious girl he could manipulate and discard. I returned his smile, and I made it warm. I made it trusting. I made it everything he expected me to be. Good night, Leo, I said. Good night, Alara, he replied. And as I walked out the door, I made a silent promise to myself. I had lived through his betrayal once. I had spent a decade watching him build a life on my broken dreams. But this time he was the one who didn't see the trap. This time I was the one with the backup plan. It started now. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of my first life like a film I couldn't pause. The way Leo had smiled at my graduation party, the one I threw for him while my own diploma gathered dust in a drawer. The way he'd introduced me to his new colleagues as his brilliant cousin who's taking some time to figure things out. The way he'd looked at me with that pitying, patient expression, as if I were a stray dog he'd taken in out of obligation. I had been so grateful to him back then. So blind. At 6 a.m., I gave up on rest and went to the kitchen. My mother was already there, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug, the morning light catching the gray in her hair. She looked tired, older than I remembered. In my first life, the stress of my collapse had aged her prematurely. I had watched her worry herself sick over me, and I had been too lost in my own misery to help her. Couldn't sleep either, she asked, her voice soft. I've got a lot on my mind, I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. The bitter smell grounded me, pulled me back to the present. She studied me for a long moment. Alara, I know something happened between you and Leo. I'm not going to pry, but I want you to know I'm on your side. Whatever it is. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment I almost cracked. The weight of everything was pressing down on my chest, suffocating. I wanted to tell her the truth, the whole ugly truth, and let her carry some of it. But I couldn't. Not yet. Leo was her nephew, her sister's son. She would need more than accusations to believe me. Thanks, Mom, I said. That means a lot. She nodded, but I could see she wasn't satisfied. She wanted to push to fix whatever was broken. That was her nature. But she also knew me well enough to recognize when I wasn't ready to talk. I spent the morning at the university library, digging through old records. In my first life, I had been too late to stop the theft of my spot. But the details of what Leo had done had come out years later, in a legal dispute that went nowhere. I remembered the names, the dates, the paper trail he had left. He wasn't clever, he was just lucky. Lucky that I had trusted him. Lucky that the university had been slow to investigate. But luck was a finite resource and his was about to run out. I pulled up a list of students who had been admitted to my program in the year I was supposed to attend. There was a name I remembered, David Chin. He had been the one Leo had replaced, the one who had lost his spot to my cousin's forgery. But David had fought back. He had filed a complaint, dug up evidence, and forced the university to launch an investigation. The investigation had ultimately found in Leo's favor, but the process had left a trail. And that trail could be my weapon. I found David's contact information and sent him a carefully worded email, pretending to be a concerned student who had heard rumors of irregularities in the admissions process. I wasn't sure if he would respond, but it was worth a shot. My phone buzzed halfway through the afternoon. My Aunt Sue. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. Elara, sweetheart, she said, her voice tight. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I need to ask a favor. Leo's computer crashed this morning. He lost everything. He has a big deadline coming up, and he's in a panic. Could you help him? You're so good with technology. A slow smile spread across my face. He was panicking. The email he had sent from his IP address, the one forging my withdrawal request, had been sent from his personal laptop. If the crash had wiped his history, he might be desperate enough to do something stupid. I'm at the library, I said, keeping my voice even. But I can stop by later. Thank you, she gushed. You're a lifesaver. I arrived at Leo's apartment at dusk. He opened the door looking ragged, his usual polished facade cracked. His eyes were red, his hair disheveled. He had clearly been working hard to cover his tracks, and the stress was showing. Elara, he said, almost surprised to see me. I thought you were avoiding me. I said, stepping inside. But your mom asked. I can't say no to her. He laughed, a hollow sound. Yeah, she has that effect on people. His laptop was on the coffee table, the screen dark. I sat down on the sofa and opened it. The machine booted up slowly, and I could see the remnants of his panic. Multiple browser windows, half-deleted files, a recycling bin full of documents he had tried to purge. I'll see what I can do, I said, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. But I need to know what happened. Did you install anything weird? Download something suspicious? He shrugged, too casual. Just the usual stuff. I don't know how it happened. 1 minute it was working, the next everything was gone. I clicked through his history. Most of it was mundane. Email, social media, a few research papers. But buried deep in the system was a folder he hadn't managed to delete. It was labeled Future, a generic, inoffensive name. I opened it, and my heart stopped. Inside were scanned copies of my signature, lifted from old documents. A list of my passwords, including my university portal login. A draft email, already formatted, addressed to the admissions office, requesting the withdrawal of my application. And a second draft, the transfer request, with my name forged at the bottom. He had been planning this for months. In my first life, I had thought it was a spontaneous act of desperation, a last-minute grab for my spot. But this was cold, calculated, premeditated. He had been setting the stage long before I ever got the acceptance letter, that I felt something shift inside me. The rage was still there, but it had been joined by something colder, determination. I wasn't just fighting to save my future anymore. I was fighting to expose the monster he had become. Find anything. Leo's voice came from behind me. Too close. I hadn't heard him approach. I closed the folder and opened the disk repair utility. Nothing yet. It's probably a corrupted driver. I can fix it, but it might take a while. He nodded, but I could feel his eyes on me, watching every move I made. He was nervous. Good. While I worked, I made small talk. So what's the big deadline? Your mom mentioned something about a project. He hesitated. Just a scholarship application. It's time sensitive. You must be pretty confident you're getting in, I said, keeping my tone light. You've already picked a program, right? He laughed again, but it was forced. I'm keeping my options open. There's a lot of competition out there. Must be nice, I said, having so many options. He didn't respond. I could feel the tension radiating off him, the barely suppressed anxiety. He knew I had refused to fund him. He knew I wasn't playing along. But he didn't know how much I knew. I think I found the problem, I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I'll need to run a few diagnostic tests. It'll take about 20 minutes. He nodded, retreating to the kitchen to pour himself a glass of water. I watched him go, then quickly plugged a USB drive into his laptop. The files were too large to email, and I didn't trust him not to find a trail in my own accounts. But a physical copy, hidden in my bag, was untraceable. The download took less than a minute. I popped the drive out and tucked it into my pocket just as he walked back into the room. Almost done, I said, my heart pounding. 20 minutes later, I was walking out of his apartment, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. He thanked me with his usual charm, but I could see the relief in his eyes. He thought I had fixed his computer and walked away oblivious. He was so wrong. That night, I sat in my room and looked through every file I had copied. It was a blueprint of his entire plan. Forged documents, falsified emails, a detailed timeline of the scheme he had built around my life. He had even created a fake recommendation letter, using the name of a professor who had retired years ago, someone who couldn't be easily contacted to confirm its authenticity. I wanted to take this straight to the university, to the police, to anyone who would listen. But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. In my first life, he had managed to get away with this for years, using his charm, his careful lies, his cultivated reputation as the golden boy. Just having evidence wasn't enough. I needed to catch him in the act, to make sure there was no ambiguity, no room for him to weasel his way out. I decided to wait. He would try again. He was too obsessed, too desperate to let this go. He would make another move, and when he did, I would be ready. The next morning I got a response from David Chan. He was interested in my concerns and wanted to meet in person. I set a time for the next afternoon, at a coffee shop near the university. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. David was a tall, serious man with wire-rimmed glasses and an intensity that reminded me of a hawk. He was, as I remembered, the one person in my first life who had come closest to exposing Leo. His own application had been flagged as a duplicate, and he had spent months trying to untangle the mess, only to give up when the university ruled in Leo's favor. I've been digging into this, he said, his voice low. There's something rotten in the admissions process. The same name keeps coming up. Leo Vance. He's connected to every irregularity I've found. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. I've heard rumors about him. What kind of irregularities? David leaned forward, his eyes bright. First, there were complaints from other applicants. They said their documents had been tampered with, their signatures forged. But the university didn't take them seriously. Then I found this. He pushed a document across the table. It was a copy of an email, time-stamped 3 months ago, from Leo's university account. It was addressed to the admissions office, asking about the status of a transfer application for a family member. He had used his own credentials to send the email, not realizing it would leave a trail. This is proof, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It's the closest I've got, David admitted. But it's not enough. He can claim he was asking for a friend, that it was a misunderstanding. I need something concrete, something that proves he acted on his own behalf. I reached into my bag and pulled out a printed copy of one of the files I had taken from Leo's laptop. It was a draft of the transfer request, with his handwriting in the margins, and a note to himself about timing the submission to coincide with my expected absence from the university. I think I can help, I said, sliding the paper across the table. David read it, his face going pale. Where did you get this? Let's just say I'm a concerned party, I said. And I have more. A lot more. For the first time, David smiled. I think we're going to get along just fine. We spent the next hour planning. I told him everything I knew, Everything I remembered from my first life. He filled in the gaps with his own research, his own connections. Together we built a case against Leo that was meticulous, airtight, devastating. By the time I left the coffee shop, the sun was setting. I felt lighter than I had in days, the burden of secrecy finally shared. But I knew the real battle was still ahead. Leo was a snake, and snakes were most dangerous when they were cornered. My phone buzzed as I walked home. Another text from my mother. Aunt Sue called. She's worried about Leo. He's been acting strange, locking himself in his room. She asked if we knew anything. I typed back quickly. No. But tell her I'll talk to him tomorrow. I think I might be able to help. I didn't mention that my version of help involved shoving the evidence of his crimes in his face. The next day, I knocked on Leo's door. He opened it slowly, his face drawn, his eyes dark with exhaustion. Alara, he said, his voice flat. What do you want? To talk, I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I think we have a lot to discuss. He closed the door behind me, his hand trembling slightly. If this is about the money again, I told you. This isn't about the money. I cut him off. This is about the email you sent from your computer. The one to the admissions office. The one asking them to withdraw my application. His face went white. I watched the realization dawn, the slow, horrifying understanding that he had been caught. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his voice cracked on the last word. Don't lie to me, I said, my voice steady. I found the files. I have the evidence. And I'm not the only one. He stared at me, his mask finally crumbling. The charm was gone. The golden boy facade was gone. All that was left was panic, naked and ugly. Alara, please, he said, his voice breaking. You don't understand. I had no choice. I was desperate. If I don't get into this program, everything falls apart. My whole future. Your future, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. What about mine? What about the future you stole from me? He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. I know everything, Leo. I know about the forged signatures, the falsified documents, the emails you sent from my account. I know about David Chun. I know about the recommendation letter. I know you've been planning this for months. His face crumpled. He looked small, pathetic, the boy I had grown up with reduced to a sniveling wreck. For a moment, almost against my will, I felt a flicker of pity, but it passed quickly, snuffed out by the memory of the life I had lost. Please don't do this, he whispered. I'll do anything. I'll pay you back. You can't pay me back, I said, my voice cold. You can't pay back what you took from me, but you can pay for it. I turned and walked to the door. He called my name, his voice rising to a desperate shout, but I didn't look back. Alara, please. I'm your family. I paused at the threshold. Family, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You made your choice, Leo. Now live with it. I walked away, leaving him alone in the ruins of his own making. But even as I walked, I knew this wasn't the end. He was cornered now, desperate. And a desperate man was a dangerous one. I didn't know what his next move would be, but I knew it was coming. And I would be waiting. I didn't even make it to the end of the block before my phone started ringing. Leo's name flashed on the screen and I let it go to voicemail. Then again. And again. By the fourth call, I had to physically stop myself from throwing the device into the street. I ducked into a small cafe, ordered a coffee I didn't want, and sat in the corner booth with my heart hammering against my ribs. The confrontation had gone exactly as I planned, but the adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a hollow, shaky feeling. I had just declared war on my own cousin, and there was no taking it back. My phone buzzed one more time. This time it wasn't a call. It was a text message, and the words made my blood run cold. I know what you took from my laptop. And I know where you live. I stared at the screen, my fingers frozen around the phone. The message was short, clinical, stripped of all emotion. It wasn't a threat, not exactly. It was a warning. A promise that I typed back with shaking hands. What do you want? The response came almost instantly. Let's meet. Tonight. Alone. No David Chun, no recordings, no backup. Just you and me. I'll tell you everything you want to know. I almost laughed. He was trying to bait me into a trap, and he wasn't even being subtle about it. But beneath the bravado I could feel the desperation. He was scared. He knew I had the evidence to destroy him, and he was scrambling for a way to regain control that I didn't reply. I sat in that cafe for 2 hours, nursing the same cup of cold coffee, going over every possible scenario in my head. If I went, I risked walking into a setup. If I didn't, he would escalate. He had already proven he had no limits. In the end, I decided to go. But I wasn't going to play by his rules. That I called David and told him what was happening. He was quiet for a long moment, then asked, "Are you sure about this?" "No," I admitted. "But I need to see what he does. I need to catch him in the act." "Text me the address," David said. "I'll be nearby. If anything goes wrong, I'm coming in." I thanked him and hung up. The weight of the plan settled over me, heavy and suffocating. I was walking into a confrontation with a man who had already proven he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. But I had something he didn't. I had already lived through his betrayal once. I knew his playbook. I knew his tells. I met Leo at a park on the edge of town, a place we'd gone as kids. It was a strange choice, almost nostalgic, and I wondered if he was trying to soften me up. The playground was empty, the swings creaking softly in the breeze. He was standing by the old oak tree, the one we'd carved our initials into when we were 12. "Alara," he said as I approached. His voice was calm, measured, nothing like the panicked wreck I'd left in his apartment. "Thanks for coming." "I didn't have much choice," I said, stopping a few feet away. "You made it pretty clear this wasn't optional." He smiled, and it was the same boyish, disarming smile he'd always used. But I could see the cracks now, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands were shoved deep into his pockets to hide their shaking. "I wanted to apologize," he said. "For everything. The email, the forged documents, all of it. I was out of line. I know that now." I blinked, caught off guard. This wasn't what I expected. "You're apologizing? Does that surprise you?" He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on mine. "You're my cousin, Alara. My family. What I did was wrong and I'm sorry." For a moment, almost against my will, I felt something shift inside me. This was the boy I'd grown up with, the boy who'd taught me how to ride a bike, who'd defended me from bullies, who'd held my hand at our grandfather's funeral. It was hard to reconcile that boy with the man who had tried to destroy me. But I remembered the files. I remembered the cold, calculated planning. And I remembered the 10 years of my life he had stolen. "Why now?" I asked, my voice flat. "Why apologize now when I have the evidence? Why not before?" His expression flickered, a crack in the facade. "Because I was scared," he said. "I still am. But I realized something." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "This isn't going to end well for either of us if we keep fighting. You'll expose me, and you'll tear the family apart. Is that really what you want?" "No," I said, and I meant it. "But I didn't start this war. You did." "I know," he said. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I'll drop out of the program. I'll move away. I'll do whatever it takes to prove I've changed." I studied his face, looking for the lie. But all I saw was earnestness, the same earnestness that had fooled me before. He was good. He was so good that "I need to think about it," I said finally. "This isn't something I can decide right now." He nodded, his expression relieved. "Of course. Take all the time you need." He held out his hand. "But I want you to know, I mean every word. I'm not going to fight you anymore." I hesitated, then shook his hand. His grip was warm, firm, the grip of a man who knew how to make people trust him. I turned and walked away, my mind churning. I knew it was too easy. I knew he was playing me. But a part of me, the part that still remembered the boy he used to be, wanted to believe it was true. My phone buzzed as I walked out of the park. "David." I saw him leave. He got into a car with someone. "You need to see this." My heart sank. "What do you mean, check your email? I sent you a video." I pulled up the email and clicked on the attachment. The video was shaky, clearly recorded from a distance, but the faces were unmistakable. Leo was sitting in the passenger seat of a car. The driver was a woman I recognized. My Aunt Sue. They were arguing, their voices too muffled to make out the words. But I could see Leo's face, the frustration, the anger. And then I saw my aunt hand him something. An envelope. Thick. Heavy. I watched the video 3 times, my stomach churning. He hadn't come to apologize. He had come to stall me. To buy time. The apology was a smokescreen, and my aunt was in on it. I called David immediately. Who else knows about this? Just me, he said. But Alara, this changes everything. Your aunt is protecting him. If she gets involved, she could destroy the case. She's his mother, I said, my voice hollow. Of course she's protecting him. I should have seen this coming. What are you going to do? I thought about it. The evidence I had was damning, but it wasn't enough if my aunt was willing to cover for him. She had access to family records, financial documents, personal information that could muddy the waters. She could claim I had forged the evidence myself, that I was unstable, jealous, out to destroy my cousin's future. I needed something else. Something she couldn't refute. Can you trace the envelope? I asked. Find out what's in it. I can try, David said. But it'll take time. Take it, I said. I'll hold him off. The next few days were a strange purgatory. I went through the motions of my life, attending classes, having dinner with my mother, pretending everything was normal. Leo texted me constantly, checking in, asking if I'd made a decision. I gave him vague answers, buying time, letting him think I was wavering. I found out the envelope's contents through a contact David had at the bank. It was cash. $10,000. My aunt had given Leo money to disappear, to start over somewhere else. But he hadn't taken it. He was still here. Still scheming. Why didn't he run? I asked David. He has the money. He could have been gone by now. Because he doesn't want to run, David said. He wants to fight. He thinks he can still win. I felt a chill run down my spine. He was right. Leo wasn't the type to cut his losses. He was the type to double down, to go all in, even when the odds were stacked against him. I got proof of that the next morning, when I opened my email and found a message from the university admissions office. It was addressed to me, but the tone was formal, almost cold. Dear Ms. Vance, we have received multiple reports regarding your application to the graduate program. We are currently investigating allegations of falsification and misconduct. Please be advised that your application has been placed on hold pending the outcome of this investigation. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Multiple reports. He had launched a counterattack. He was trying to make me look like the fraud. I called Mrs. Albright at the admin office, but she was evasive. I can't discuss the details of an ongoing investigation, she said. But I can confirm that we received a complaint from a source claiming to have evidence of your involvement in fraudulent activity. What kind of evidence? I demanded. I can't say. But I would advise you to consult legal counsel. I hung up, my heart pounding. He had turned the tables. He had made himself the victim. I didn't have time to panic. I called David and told him what had happened. He was quiet for a long moment, then said, I was afraid of this. He's using your own strategy against you. I know, I said. But he can't prove anything because nothing I did was fraudulent. I have the email logs, the IP addresses, the witness statements. I have the truth. The truth doesn't matter if he controls the narrative, David said. Right now, he's convinced the university that you're the one who's been manipulating the system. You need to prove otherwise, and you need to do it fast. I spent the rest of the day gathering evidence. The IP addresses, the timestamps, the recorded conversations. I even got a statement from my mother, who had finally started to believe me after I showed her the files I had copied from Leo's laptop. It was a small victory, but it wasn't enough. The investigation dragged on for 2 weeks. During that time, Leo went silent. No texts, no calls, no carefully worded apologies. He was waiting, watching, letting the process play out. He knew that the longer the investigation dragged on, the more it would damage my credibility. Even if I was cleared, the stain of suspicion would linger. I couldn't let that happen. I needed to force his hand. I reached out to him through my aunt. I told her I wanted to meet, to talk things through, to find a way to end this without destroying the family. She was hesitant at first, but I could hear the hope in her voice. She wanted peace. She wanted her son to be innocent. I set the meeting for a Sunday afternoon, at my mother's house. Neutral territory. I told Leo the first wanted to call a truce. He arrived looking composed, polished, the golden boy restored. He smiled at my mother, hugged my aunt, shook my hand like we were old friends. But I saw the flicker in his eyes, the same calculation I had seen in that first moment of my rebirth. "I'm glad you called," he said, sitting down across from me. "This has been going on too long." "I agree," I said. "I want to offer you a deal." He raised an eyebrow. "A deal? You withdraw your complaint. You admit to the university that the allegations against me were false, and in exchange I'll drop everything. I won't release the evidence. I won't press charges. We can go back to being a family." He stared at me and I could see the gears turning in his head. It was too good to be true and he knew it. But he couldn't resist the chance to walk away unscathed. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "Because I'm tired," I said, and it wasn't entirely a lie. Tired of fighting. Tired of the lies. I just want my life back. He leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. He thought he had one. He thought I was surrendering. "All right," he said. "I'll do it. I'll withdraw the complaint." "I need it in writing," I said. "A formal letter to the university, signed by you." "Of course." He reached for his bag, pulling out a folder. "I actually prepared something in advance. I thought you might want this." He slid a letter across the table. It was addressed to the admissions office, withdrawing his complaint and acknowledging that the allegations against me were based on a misunderstanding. I read it carefully, looking for the trap. But it was exactly what I had asked for. "Thank you," I said, my voice soft. "I'm sorry, Alara," he said. "For everything." I nodded, and for a moment, I almost believed him. But then I saw my aunt shift in her seat, her hand moving to her purse. I saw Leo's eyes flick to her, a brief, almost imperceptible signal that she was recording us. That I felt my blood run cold. The letter was a ruse. He was going to use my own words against me, to paint me as the aggressor, the one who had tried to extort him, the one who had manipulated the system to ruin his future. I should have been angry. I should have been scared. But instead, I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. That I had expected this. I had planned for it. "Before we finalize this," I said, reaching into my own bag, "I have something I'd like you to see." I pulled out a recording device and placed it on the table. Leo's face went white. "This is a recording of every conversation we've had since this started," I said, "including the one in the park. And the one we're having right now. It's been running since you walked through the door." My aunt's hand froze. Leo's composure crumbled. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady. "You're going to sign that letter. You're going to withdraw your complaint. And then you're going to disappear from my life. Completely. No calls, no texts, no carefully worded apologies. If I ever see you again, I'll release everything. All of it. The files, the recordings, the proof that you tried to steal my life." "Alara," my mother said, her voice shaking. "What are you doing?" "I'm protecting myself," I said. "For the first time in my life, I'm protecting myself." Leo stared at me, his face a mask of shock and fury. He had lost. He knew it. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. He signed the letter with shaking hands. He walked out of the house without another word. My aunt followed him, her face pale, her eyes avoiding mine. I sat at the table for a long time, the letter and the recording in front of me. My mother was crying softly in the kitchen. I could hear her, but I couldn't move. I had won. I had beaten him. But the victory felt hollow, lonely. I looked down at the letter. It was signed. It was over. But I knew deep down that it wasn't the end. Leo had been humiliated, exposed, and defeated. And someone like him, someone with his pride, his obsession, his hunger, didn't just walk away. He would be back. And the next time, he wouldn't try to manipulate me. He would try to destroy me. I folded the letter and tucked it into my pocket. I was ready. I had beaten him once. I could do it again. But as I looked out the window, watching my aunt's car pull out of the driveway, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a mistake. The war was over, but the battlefield was still smoldering. And somewhere in the ashes, Leo was already planning his next move. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The silence in the house after Leo left was deafening. I sat at the table, the signed letter in my hand, and listened to my mother's muffled sobs from the kitchen. She had never seen me like this. Cold, calculating, merciless. I had always been the soft one, the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed things over. But that girl was dead. She had died 10 years ago. In a life that no longer existed. That my mother walked back into the room, her eyes red, her hands trembling around a glass of water. "Alara, I don't understand," she said, her voice cracking. "What happened to you? You used to be so kind." "I'm still kind," I said, and I meant it. "But kindness doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It doesn't mean letting them steal your future and smile while they do it." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He's your cousin. He's family." "He stopped being family the moment he forged my signature," I said, my voice flat. "Family doesn't do that, Mom. Family doesn't destroy you and then come back for more." She opened her mouth to argue, but I could see the doubt flickering in her eyes. She had seen the files. She had heard the recordings. She knew on some level that I was telling the truth. But accepting it meant accepting that her nephew, the boy she had watched grow up, was a monster. And that was a truth too heavy to bear. "I need some air," I said, standing up. "I'll be back later." I walked out of the house before she could stop me. The night air hit my face, cool and sharp, and I breathed it in like a drowning woman. I had won. I had the letter, the recordings, the evidence. Leo was exposed, humiliated, banished from my life. But the victory tasted like ash that I walked aimlessly through the streets, my mind churning. The confrontation had been necessary, but it had also been a gamble. Leo had backed down, but I knew him better than anyone. He wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. He would regroup. He would plan. And he would come back stronger. The thought sent a chill down my spine. I had been so focused on winning the battle that I hadn't thought about the war. That my phone buzzed. "David. Are you okay? I heard what happened." "News travels fast," I said, my voice hollowed. "Your mother called my mother. Everyone knows. Alara, you need to be careful. Leo didn't just walk away because you threatened him. He walked away because he's planning something." "I know," I said. "I'm not stupid." "I never said you were," he said, his voice softening. "I'm just saying watch your back. He's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things." I hung up and kept walking. The streets were quiet, the shops closed, the only sound the distant hum of traffic. I felt like I was walking through a ghost town, the echoes of my past life haunting every corner. That I thought about the 10 years I had lost, the career I had never built, the relationships I had never formed, the version of myself that had withered under the weight of Leo's betrayal. I had spent so long hating him that I had forgotten to mourn the person I used to be. But I wasn't that person anymore. I was stronger, harder, sharper. And I would never let anyone take anything from me again. The next morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number. "I know what you did. And I know you think you won. But you haven't seen anything yet." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I didn't recognize the number, but I recognized the tone. Lang. He had gotten a new phone, a new identity, a new way to reach me. I blocked the number and went about my day. But the text stayed with me, a dark cloud hovering at the edge of my thoughts. A week passed. Leo was silent. My aunt stopped calling. The university cleared my name, officially reinstating my application. I thought for a brief, foolish moment that it was over. Then I got a call from my mother. Her voice was frantic, barely intelligible through her tears. "Alara, you need to come home. Something's happened. Something terrible." I dropped everything and ran. The drive to her house felt like an eternity. Every red light a punishment. Every stop sign a delay. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were shaking. The front door was open. I walked inside and found my mother sitting on the couch, her face pale, a letter clutched in her hands. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She handed me the letter without a word. It was addressed to her, the handwriting familiar. Leo's handwriting. "Dear Aunt Sue, I'm sorry for the pain I've caused. I know I've made mistakes, but I want you to know that I'm trying to change. The only reason I did what I did was because Alara threatened me. She said she would destroy my life if I didn't give her what she wanted. I have proof. I've attached it below. I hope you can forgive me. I love you. I read the letter twice, my blood running cold. He was still playing the victim. Still twisting the narrative. Mom, this is a lie, I said, my voice steady. You know this is a lie. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with something I had never seen before. Doubt. He sent me a recording, Ilara. A recording of you saying you would destroy him. It's not pretty. My heart stopped. The recording. In my confrontation with Leo, I had told him I would release everything if he didn't sign the letter. I had threatened him. And he had recorded it. Mom, you have to understand, I said, my voice rising. I was protecting myself. He was going to ruin me. I had no choice. Everyone has a choice, she said, her voice trembling. And you chose to threaten your own cousin. You chose to tear this family apart.
Ist her, stunt?
She was blaming me. After everything Leo had done, she was blaming me. Did he send you the files? I demanded. The ones where he forged my signature, the ones where he planned the whole thing. He said those were fake, she said. He said you made them up to destroy him. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. He had turned my own family against me. He had used the one weapon I couldn't fight. The truth twisted into a lie. I need to show you something, I said, pulling out my phone. The recordings I have. The real recordings. She shook her head, her hands covering her face. I can't do this right now, Ilara. I need time. I need to think. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her to make her see the truth. But I knew it wouldn't work. Leo had planted the seeds of doubt, and they had already taken root. I walked out of the house, my legs barely supporting me. The world felt tilted wrong, like I was walking through a nightmare. He had won. Not the battle, but the war. He had taken my family, my support system, the one thing I thought I could always count on. I called David. He answered on the first ring. What happened? He turned my mother against me, I said, my voice breaking. He sent her a recording of our conversation. Twisted it to make me look like the aggressor. She doesn't believe me anymore. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then David spoke, his voice grim. He's playing the long game. He's trying to isolate you. I know, I said. And it's working. Don't let it, he said. You're not alone, Ilara. You have me. You have the evidence. You have the truth. Don't give him that power. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel the strength I had felt in that moment of confrontation, the cold certainty that I was right. But all I felt was tired, hollow, empty. That I need to go, I said. I need to think. I hung up and walked to my car. But I didn't drive home. I drove to the one place I knew I could find answers. Leo's apartment. That I didn't knock. I used the spare key my aunt had given me years ago. The one I had never returned. The door swung open, and I stepped inside. That the apartment was empty. Clean. Too clean. The furniture was gone, the shelves bare, the walls stripped of the pictures and posters that had once covered them. He had vanished. He had taken everything and disappeared. But he had left one thing behind. A note, taped to the refrigerator. You should have taken the deal when you had the chance. Now you'll lose everything. And when you're at your lowest, I'll be there to watch. I stared at the note, my hands trembling. He wasn't just trying to destroy me. He was savoring it. This was a game to him. And he was determined to win. I tore the note off the refrigerator and crumpled it in my fist. I had been so focused on protecting myself that I had forgotten one crucial thing. Leo wasn't just a schemer. He was a predator. And predators didn't stop until their prey was dead. I walked back to my car, the note burning a hole in my pocket. I knew what I had to do. I had to go on the offensive. I had to take the fight to him. But first, I needed to understand his plan. And to understand his plan, I needed to understand his mind. I spent the next week obsessively cataloging everything I knew about Leo. His habits, his weaknesses, his patterns. I went back through the files I had copied from his laptop, searching for anything I might have missed. And then I found it. A folder I had overlooked, buried deep in his system. It was labeled Backup Plan. Inside were documents, photos, and letters that made my blood run cold. Leo had been planning this for years. Not just the theft of my spot, but the complete destruction of my life. The documents detailed a campaign of character assassination, designed to make me look unstable, unreliable, and unfit for any kind of success. He had forged letters, created fake social media profiles, even hired people to spread rumors about me that I read through the documents, my stomach churning. He had been building this plan since we were in high school. He had resented me for years, for my grades, my confidence, the way everyone in the family compared him to me. He had seen me as a threat, and he had decided to eliminate me. The folder also contained something else. A list of names. People he had targeted. People he had destroyed. I recognized some of them, classmates, colleagues, even a few friends I had lost over the years. He had been manipulating the people around me for a long time, and I had never noticed that I felt sick. I had thought I was fighting a recent betrayal, a desperate act by a desperate man. But this was a crusade, a lifelong obsession, and I was his ultimate target. That I called David and read him the contents of the folder. He was silent for a long moment, then said, "This changes everything. This isn't just about your application. This is a pattern of behavior. A criminal pattern." "I know," I said, "but I don't have the resources to fight him on this. He's been doing this for years. He knows how to cover his tracks." "Then we need to find someone who does," David said. "Someone with experience. Someone who can help us build a case." He was right. I couldn't do this alone. I needed allies. I needed professionals. That I started making calls. I reached out to the victims on Leo's list, people I had never met but whose lives he had shattered. Some of them were skeptical at first, but when I shared the evidence, they started to believe. One by one, they agreed to help me. I also reached out to a lawyer, a friend of David's. She specialized in fraud cases, and when I showed her the folder, she was visibly shaken. "This is one of the most elaborate cases I've ever seen," she said. "If we can prove all of this, he's looking at serious charges. But it's going to take time. And it's going to take resources." "I don't care how long it takes," I said. "I'm not going to let him get away with this." The investigation began in earnest. We interviewed witnesses, collected evidence, and built a case that was meticulous, airtight, and damning. But Leo was always one step ahead. He had covered his tracks so well that we kept hitting dead ends. Then, just as I was starting to lose hope, I got a call from an unexpected source. "My Aunt Suda, Ilara," she said, her voice shaky. "I need to see you. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." I met her at a coffee shop, the same one where I had met David. She looked older, smaller, the weight of everything pressing down on her shoulders. "I'm sorry," she said before I could speak. "For everything. I should have believed you. I should have stopped him. But I was scared. He's my son, and I thought if I protected him, it would make things right." "Did it?" I asked, my voice flat. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "He's not the person I thought he was. He's been lying to me for years. Stealing from me, manipulating me. I found the real files, Ilara. The ones he tried to delete. I know what he did. All of it." I felt a surge of something, not quite relief but close. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I can't live with it anymore," she said. "I can't keep pretending. I want to help you stop him." I stared at her, searching for the lie. But all I saw was a broken woman, a mother who had finally seen her son for what he was. "I don't trust you," I said, and I meant it. "I don't expect you to," she said. "But I have information. Documents, bank records, things he thought I didn't know about. If you want to build a case, you need them." I hesitated. She was right. The evidence she had could be the key to finally bringing Leo down. "Fine," I said. "But if this is a trap, I'll make sure you go down with him." She nodded, her eyes filled with a painful understanding. I wouldn't expect anything less. We worked together for weeks, building the case. My aunt's evidence was the missing piece, the final nail in Leo's coffin. We had enough to go to the police. The day of the arrest was surreal. I watched from a distance as the police cars pulled up to the house where Leo was staying. He was caught off guard, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. They let him out in handcuffs, his face pale, his eyes wild. He looked right at me as they put him in the car. And in that moment, I saw something I hadn't expected. Not hatred, not defiance. Fear. He was afraid. For the first time in his life, he was truly afraid. That I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt victorious. But all I felt was empty. The trial was a media circus. Every detail of Leo's crimes was laid bare: his manipulation, his lies, the lives he had destroyed. The prosecution painted a picture of a man driven by envy and ambition. A man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. The verdict was swift. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing was harsher than I expected. 5 years in a federal prison. But even as the judge delivered the sentence, I couldn't feel relieved. The damage had been done. The lives he had destroyed couldn't be rebuilt by a conviction. My mother came to see me after the trial. She was crying, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. I hugged her, told her it was okay. But a part of me couldn't forget the way she had looked at me, the doubt in her eyes, the way she had chosen him over me. That I knew, deep down, that things would never be the same. But I also knew that I had done the right thing. I had taken back my life. I had faced the enemy and won. That I visited Leo in prison once. I don't know why I went, some misplaced sense of closure, I suppose. He looked older, thinner, the golden boy facade completely gone. Why did you do it? I asked. All of it. The lies, the manipulations. Was it really worth it? He looked at me, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something. Regret, maybe. Or maybe just exhaustion, I don't know, he said. I thought it would make me happy. But it never did. I just kept wanting more. I nodded, not sure what else to say. I had spent so long hating him that I had forgotten he was human. Flawed, broken, human. I walked out of the prison and never looked back. The past was behind me. The future was ahead. I started over. I enrolled in the graduate program, the one I had fought so hard to protect. I made new friends, built a new life. I even started dating again, something I thought I would never be able to do. But the scars remained. The trust issues, the nightmares, the constant fear that someone was out to get me. I went to therapy, tried to heal, but some wounds take longer to heal than others. One night, I was sitting in my apartment, looking out the window at the city lights. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Hey. You okay? I smiled, a small, fragile thing. Yeah. I think I am. Good. Because I wanted to tell you something. I got a call from a former colleague of mine. She's working on a case that sounds eerily similar to yours. Another student whose application was stolen. My heart stopped. Another one. Looks like Leo had a partner. Someone who helped him. Someone who's still out there. I felt the old fear creep back in, cold and suffocating. The war wasn't over. It had just taken a new form. Who is it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. David hesitated. Then he said the name that made my blood run cold, your Aunt Sue. The world tilted. My aunt, the woman who had helped me build the case, had been in on it the whole time. The tears, the apologies, the evidence she had found. It was all part of the plan. I felt a scream building in my throat, but I choked it down. I had beaten Leo. I could beat her too. But as I sat in the dark, staring at my phone, I knew one thing for certain: the war was far from over. And the enemy was closer than I ever imagined. The name hung in the air like smoke, choking me. Aunt Sue. The same woman who had sat across from me in that coffee shop, tears streaming down her face, begging for forgiveness. The same woman who had handed over documents she claimed would help destroy her son. The same woman who had played me like a fiddle. I couldn't breathe. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. David, that's impossible. She helped us. She gave us evidence. She testified against him at the trial. I know, David said, his voice heavy. That's what makes this so twisted. She was feeding you information she knew would convict him. But she was also covering her own tracks. The evidence she gave us was carefully curated. It painted Leo as the mastermind while leaving her name completely out of it. I thought back to every interaction I had with my aunt over the past months. The way she had been so eager to help. The way she had cried when Leo was arrested. The way she had visited him in prison every single week, longer than anyone else. I had thought it was guilt, a mother's broken heart. But what if it was something else? What if she was checking on her partner, making sure he kept his mouth shut? Are you sure? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Her colleague found emails, David said. Old ones, from before you even applied to the program. Leo and your aunt were working together. She was the one who provided him with the financial records he needed to forge your signature. She was the one who tipped him off when the university started investigating. And she was the one who suggested he frame you for the whole thing if it ever came to light. I felt sick. My stomach churned, and I had to sit down before my legs gave out. My aunt had been the architect of my destruction all along. Leo was just the executor. Why, I asked. Why would she do that? She's my aunt. She watched me grow up. She used to braid my hair and take me to the movies. Money, David said simply. I found records of large deposits into a joint account she and Leo shared. They were planning to sell your family's property, the one your grandmother left to you and your mother. If Leo got into the program and established a career, he would have had the standing to challenge the will, and she would have gotten a cut. My grandmother's house, the old Victorian on Maple Street, the one I had spent every summer in as a child. My mother and I had always assumed it would be ours, passed down through the generations. But the will had a clause, a vague one about the property being held in trust for the most promising descendant. Leo had been trying to position himself as that descendant for years. She was willing to destroy me for a house, I asked, my voice cracking. She was willing to destroy you for a lot more than that, David said. The property, the status, the control. Your aunt has been playing a long game, Elara. And we just caught her. I sat in the darkness, my mind reeling. I had spent so long hating Leo that I had never stopped to ask who had taught him to hate me. Who had nurtured that envy, that ambition, that ruthless hunger? It was his mother. The woman who had smiled at me at every family dinner, who had hugged me at every holiday, who had called me her second daughter. She had been grooming him for this. Maybe not explicitly, maybe not in words, but in every whispered criticism, every pointed comparison, every moment she made him feel like he wasn't enough. She had created a monster. And then she had turned him loose on me. Where is she now? I asked. She's at home, David said. I have people watching her. But Elara, you need to be careful. If she finds out we know, she might try to run. Or worse. Worse. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. My aunt had already proven she was capable of destroying lives. What else was she capable of? I spent the rest of the night pacing my apartment, my mind racing through every possible scenario. I could go to the police, hand over the evidence David had found, and let the law handle it. But that would take time, and time was a luxury I didn't have. My aunt was smart, smarter than Leo. She would see the writing on the wall and disappear before anyone could stop her. I needed to confront her. Not in anger, not in accusation, but strategically. I needed to make her believe I didn't know anything. I needed to give her enough rope to hang herself. I called her the next morning, my voice steady and warm. Aunt Sue, I was wondering if we could have lunch. I feel like we haven't really talked since the trial. And I wanted to thank you again for everything you did to help me. There was a pause on the other end of the line, just a fraction of a second too long. Of course, sweetheart, she said, her voice the same soft, maternal tone I had heard my whole life. I would love that. How about the little bistro on Main Street? We used to go there when you were a child. My heart ached at the mention of it. It was a small, unassuming place, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. I remembered sitting in the corner booth with her, sharing a slice of cheesecake, telling her about my dreams. She had listened then, nodded and smiled. But she had also been planning my destruction. Perfect, I said. I'll see you at noon. I hung up and stared at the phone for a long moment. I was walking into a trap, and I knew it. But I was also setting one of my own. I called David and told him the plan. He was skeptical, worried. Are you sure about this? If she suspects anything, she could be dangerous. I'm sure, I said. And I need you to be close by. Just in case. He agreed reluctantly. I could hear the concern in his voice, but he didn't argue. He knew me well enough to know that once I had made up my mind, there was no changing it. The bistro was almost empty when I arrived. I spotted my aunt in the corner booth, the same one from my childhood. She looked the same as always, polished and composed, her hair perfectly styled, her smile warm and welcoming. But I saw the cracks now, the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes darted to the door the moment I walked in. Elara, sweetheart, she said, rising to hug me. Her embrace was the same as always, soft and scented with her familiar perfume. But I felt nothing. No warmth. No affection. Just a cold, hollow emptiness that I sat down across from her and ordered a coffee. She did the same. For a few moments, we made small talk, chatting about the weather, about my mother's garden, about the latest family gossip. It was surreal, sitting across from the woman who had tried to destroy my life, talking about mundane things as if nothing had happened. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I set down my coffee cup and looked her in the eye. I know about the emails, Aunt Sue. I know about the joint account. I know everything. Her face went pale. The mask slipped, just for a second, and I saw the fear underneath. But then it was back, the warm, concerned smile. Alara, I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice steady. You've been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe you should see someone. A therapist, perhaps. Don't, I said, my voice cold. Don't patronize me. I have the evidence. I have the emails, the bank records, the testimony from your former colleague. You can drop the act. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she laughed. It was a brittle, hollow sound. Nothing like the warm laugh I remembered from my childhood. You always were smarter than Leo, she said. I told him that. I told him you would figure it out eventually. But he never listened to me. He was so obsessed with proving he was better than you that he forgot the most important rule. Never underestimate your enemy. Enemy? I repeated, the word tasting like poison. Is that what I am to you? An enemy? She leaned back in her seat, her eyes cold and calculating. You've always been an enemy, Alara. From the moment you were born. You took everything from me. The attention, the affection, the opportunities. My own sister, your mother. She got everything I ever wanted. And you got everything she did. I stared at her, stunned. This is about jealousy, about what that my mom got the better husband, the bigger house. This is about a life I was supposed to have, she said, her voice rising. I was the older sister. I was the one who was supposed to succeed. But your mother was always the favorite. Always the golden child. And when you came along, you were just another reminder of everything I didn't have. You could have had everything, I said. You could have built your own life. Instead, you spent all your time trying to tear ours down. She laughed again, the sound more manic this time. You don't get it. You'll never get it. You've never had to fight for anything. Everything was handed to you on a silver platter. Everything, I said, my voice shaking. Everything. You think this was easy. You think watching your own family betray you was easy. You think fighting for my life day after day was easy. She didn't answer. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with a cold, bitter hatred that I pulled out my phone and pressed record. Tell me everything. Now. She looked at the phone, then back at me. For a moment, I thought she would refuse. But then she started talking. It all came out. The years of planning, the manipulation, the lies. She had been the one to suggest Leo forge my signature. She had been the one to provide him with the documents he needed. She had been the one to coach him on how to frame me. How to make me look unstable, how to turn my family against me. Leo was just a pawn, she said, her voice flat. He was useful, but he was also reckless. He made mistakes. He got sloppy. That's why I had to step in, to clean up his mess. Like the recording, I said. The one you helped him make to turn my mother against me. She nodded. He was going to use it anyway. I just made sure it was timed perfectly. I knew your mother would believe him. She's always been so gullible, so eager to see the best in people. It was easy. I felt a surge of rage, hot and blinding. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused me. But I forced myself to stay calm. I needed the recording. I needed the confession. Why did you testify against him? I asked. Why did you help put him in prison? Because he was a liability, she said, her voice matter of fact. He was going to bring us all down. I had to sacrifice him to save myself. And it worked, didn't it? You believed me. Everyone believed me. I was the grieving mother, the victim, the innocent bystander. You're a monster, I said. No, she said, shaking her head. I'm a survivor. There's a difference. I couldn't take any more. I stood up, my hands trembling. This isn't over. I'm going to the police. I'm going to make sure they know what you did. She smiled, a cold, predatory smile. Go ahead. But if you do, I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about you, Alara. Every secret, every mistake, every little thing you've ever done. I've been collecting them for years. You don't think I was prepared? I froze. I had secrets, everyone did. Nothing illegal, nothing criminal, but things I was ashamed of. Things I didn't want the world to know. You're bluffing, I said as she pulled out a folder from her bag and tossed it onto the table. Read it. All of it. And then decide if you really want to take this to the police. I opened the folder. Inside were pages and pages of notes, photographs, recorded conversations. My secrets laid bare. The panic attacks I had in college. The lies I had told to get out of family obligations. The affair I'd had with a married man, one of the few things I still felt guilty about. I felt the blood drain from my face. How did you get this? I have my ways, she said. I've been preparing for this moment for a long time. If I go down, you go down with me. I stood there paralyzed. She had me trapped. If I went to the police, she would destroy my reputation, my relationships, everything I had worked so hard to rebuild. And if I didn't, she would walk away free, continuing to scheme, to destroy, to poison everything she touched. What do you want? I asked, my voice barely a whisper as she smiled. The smile of a woman who had just won. I want you to leave. Walk away. Forget everything you think you know. Let me live my life, and I'll let you live yours. And if I don't, then I'll destroy you, she said, her voice cold. I've done it before. And I can do it again. I stared at her, my mind racing. I knew I should fight. I knew I should stand up to her, expose her, bring her to justice. But the fear was overwhelming, paralyzing. I walked out of the bistro without another word. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, the world was going on as if nothing had happened. But my world was shattered. That I didn't go to the police. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to think, to plan, to find a way to beat her at her own game. That I called David and told him everything. He was silent for a long moment, then said, She's been planning this for years. She's always had a backup plan. I know, I said. But I can't let her win. I can't let her destroy me. Then don't, he said. Fight back. On your terms. How? I asked. She has everything. The evidence, the secrets, the leverage. Let me think about it, he said. There's always a way. We just have to find it. The next few weeks were a nightmare. I went through the motions of my life, but I was constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next blow. My aunt didn't make a move, but I knew she was watching. Waiting. Then, one night I got a call from my mother. She was crying, her voice barely intelligible. Alara, I need to tell you something. I know what your aunt did. I know everything. My heart stopped. How? Because I just found the real files. The ones she thought she had destroyed. She kept a copy, hidden in her old desk. I found it when I was helping her clean out her house. I felt a surge of hope. Can you bring them to me? Can you get them? I already have them, she said. I'm on my way. She arrived an hour later, her face pale, her hands trembling. She handed me a folder, thick with documents. I opened it and started reading. It was everything. The emails, the bank records, the planning documents. Everything my aunt had tried to destroy. Mom, this is it, I said, my voice shaking. This is everything we need. I know, she said. But there's something else. Something I didn't expect to find. She pulled out a letter, old and yellowed. The handwriting was familiar. My grandmother's handwriting. I found this in the same desk, my mother said. It's a letter from Mom. She wrote it just before she died. She knew about your aunt's plans. She knew what she was doing. And she left instructions. I read the letter, my eyes scanning the faded words. It was a formal document, a codicil to my grandmother's will. It stripped my aunt of any claim to the family property and named me as the sole heir. She knew, I whispered. She knew what was going to happen. She did, my mother said. And she made sure you would be protected. I felt tears streaming down my face. My grandmother, the woman I had loved so much, had seen the darkness in her own daughter, and had taken steps to stop it. She had given me a weapon I didn't even know existed. I took the letter, the files, and the evidence to the police the next day. My aunt was arrested within hours. She fought it, of course, tried to use her leverage against me. But this time, I was ready. I released a statement to the press, a carefully worded account of everything she had done. I didn't hide my secrets. I didn't try to protect my reputation. I told the truth, all of it, and let the chips fall where they may. To my surprise, the world didn't end. My friends stayed by my side. My mother, broken but proud, stood by me. And the public, for the most part, supported me. My aunt was convicted. She was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, longer than Leo. But even as the judge delivered the sentence, I felt no satisfaction. Just a tired, hollow emptiness. I visited her once after the trial. She looked old, broken, nothing like the polished, composed woman I had known my whole life. Why, I asked. Why did you do it? Was it really worth it? She looked at me, her eyes empty. I don't know, she said. I thought it would make me happy. But it never did. I just kept wanting more. It was the same thing Leo had said. The same emptiness. The same hunger. I walked out of the prison and never looked back. The war was finally over. The enemy was defeated. But the scars remained. I spent the next year rebuilding my life. I graduated from the program, started a new career, and even found love again. My mother and I grew closer, our relationship stronger than it had ever been. But I never forgot. I never stopped looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. The trauma had changed me, hardened me, made me into someone I didn't always recognize. One night, I was sitting in my apartment, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Justice was served. But I'll never forgive you for what you did to my mother. It was Leo. He had been released early, I had heard, on good behavior. He was out there, somewhere, carrying the same hunger. The same obsession. I stared at the text for a long moment. The fear was there, cold and familiar. But so was something else. Determination. I typed back a single word. Come. I didn't know if he would. I didn't know if the war was truly over, or if it was just beginning. But I knew one thing for certain, that I was ready. The single word sat on my screen, glowing in the darkness of my apartment. Come. I had sent it on impulse, a challenge thrown into the void. But now, staring at the blank space where his reply should be, I felt the weight of what I had done. I had invited the enemy back into my life. The minutes stretched into an hour. My phone remained silent. I told myself it was a bluff, that Leo was too broken, too afraid to confront me after everything he had lost. But a small voice in my head reminded me that broken people were the most dangerous. They had nothing left to lose. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room, the lights off, watching the street below. Every shadow was a threat, every distant footstep a potential attack. The paranoia was suffocating, but I couldn't shake it. Leo had said he would never forgive me, and I knew him well enough to know he meant it. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. I had built a career for myself in the years since the trial. A small but successful consulting firm that helped students navigate the treacherous waters of academic admissions. I had made it my mission to protect others from the kind of betrayal I had suffered. It was my way of taking back control, of turning my pain into purpose. My assistant, a bright-eyed young woman named Maya, greeted me with her usual enthusiasm. Alara, there's someone here to see you. He says he's an old friend. I felt a chill run down my spine. Who is it? He didn't give his name. But he said you would know him. He's in the conference room. I walked to the conference room, my heart pounding. I pushed open the door, and there he was. Leo. He looked different. Older, thinner, his face etched with lines that hadn't been there before. His hair was graying at the temples, and there was a weariness in his eyes that I had never seen. But there was also something else, something that made my blood run cold. Determination. Alara, he said, his voice soft. Thank you for seeing me. I stood in the doorway, my hand still on the handle. I didn't invite you to my office. I invited you to fight. He smiled a sad, hollow smile. I know. And I'm here. But not for the reason you think. I stepped into the room and closed the door behind me. Then why are you here? He gestured to the chair across from him. Please. Sit. I promise I'm not here to hurt you. I hesitated, then sat down. I kept my distance, my body tense and ready to move if necessary. Talk. He took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the table between us. I've had a lot of time to think, Alara. In prison, All that time alone with my thoughts, I started to realize things. Things I should have realized a long time ago. Like what I asked, my voice flat, like the fact that I was never the victim. I was the villain. I spent my whole life blaming you for everything that went wrong, but the truth is, I was the one who made the choices. I was the one who lied, who cheated, who stole. And I was the one who destroyed our family. I stared at him, searching for the lie. But all I saw was exhaustion. A bone-deep weariness that seemed to have aged him by decades. Why are you telling me this? I asked. What do you want? I want to apologize, he said. Not because I think it will fix anything. I know it won't. But because I need to say it. I need you to know that I understand what I did. And I'm sorry. I felt a surge of anger. Hot and bitter. Sorry you think sorry is enough. You took everything from me. My future, my family, my trust. You and your mother destroyed my life, and you want me to just accept an apology? No, he said, shaking his head. I don't expect you to accept it. I don't expect anything. I just needed to say it. We sat in silence for a long moment. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was mixed with something else. Confusion. I had spent so long hating Leo that I didn't know how to process this version of him. The one who seemed genuinely remorseful. What about your mother? I asked finally. Do you still talk to her? He flinched at the mention of her. No. I haven't spoken to her since the trial. She was the one who made me what I am, Elara. She filled my head with all that poison, made me believe I was entitled to everything you had. But I made the choice to act on it. I have to live with that. I didn't know what to say. The hatred I had carried for so long was still there, but it was beginning to feel heavy, exhausting. I had spent years fighting Leo, and now he was standing in front of me, defeated, broken, asking for nothing but a chance to say he was sorry. What do you want from me? I asked again. Nothing, he said. I'm leaving. I'm going to start over somewhere else, try to build a life that doesn't involve hurting anyone. I just wanted to say goodbye, and to tell you that I'm sorry. For everything. He stood up and walked to the door. I watched him go, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to let him leave, to pretend this conversation had never happened. But another part, the part that had been shaped by years of pain and loss, couldn't let go. Leo, I said, my voice sharp. Wait. He stopped, his hand on the door handle. He turned to look at me, his eyes worried. I don't forgive you, I said. I don't know if I ever will. But I'm tired of carrying this hatred. It's heavy. It's been weighing me down for too long. He nodded, a flicker of something like relief passing over his face. I understand. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, I said. Because you're not getting it. But I'm going to try to move on. For my own sake. Not for yours. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. That's more than I deserve. He walked out of the room, and I heard his footsteps fade down the hallway. I sat in the conference room for a long time, staring at the empty chair across from me. The war was finally over. Leo was gone, not defeated, but released. I had let him walk away, not because I trusted him, but because I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of hating, tired of carrying the weight of the past. I went home that night and sat in my apartment, the silence pressing in around me. I thought about the years I had spent obsessed with revenge, the years I had let Leo and his mother define me. I had fought so hard to take back my life that I had forgotten to actually live it. My phone buzzed. David, how are you holding up? I don't know, I admitted. He came to see me today. Lang. He apologized. There was a long pause on the other end. Are you okay? I think so, I said. I think I'm finally ready to move on. That's good, Elara. That's really good. I hung up and walked to the window. The city was spread out below me, a glittering sea of lights. For the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Hope. The next few months were a blur of activity. I threw myself into my work, expanding my consulting firm, and taking on more clients. I started volunteering at a local shelter, helping women who had been through similar traumas rebuild their lives. It was exhausting, but it was also healing. I was finally using my pain to help others. My mother and I grew closer than ever. We talked about everything, the good and the bad. She had been through her own journey of healing, struggling to come to terms with what her sister had done. But she never wavered in her support for me. She was my rock, my anchor in the storm. One evening, she came over for dinner. We sat at my kitchen table, sharing a bottle of wine and talking about the future. I was thinking about buying a new place, I said. Something with a garden. I want to plant flowers, maybe even a vegetable patch. My mother smiled. That sounds lovely. Your grandmother would have loved that. She always said you had a green thumb. I felt a pang of sadness at the mention of my grandmother. I still missed her, even after all these years. But the sadness was mixed with gratitude. She had protected me, even from beyond the grave. Mom, I said, my voice hesitant. I've been thinking about something. Something I need to do. What is it? I want to visit my aunt. In prison. She looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. Alara, after everything she did to you, why would you want to see her? Because I need closure, I said. I need to look her in the eye and tell her that I'm done. That she doesn't have power over me anymore. My mother was silent for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. If that's what you need, then I'll support you. But be careful. She's still dangerous. I visited my aunt the next weekend. The prison was a cold, gray building, the kind of place that seemed to suck the warmth out of the air. I sat in a small visiting room, waiting for her to be brought in. She looked older than I remembered, her hair gray and thinning, her face lined with bitterness. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, a hungry, predatory gleam that made my skin crawl. Alara, she said, her voice a mocking sing-song. So nice of you to visit. Have you come to gloat? No, I said. I've come to say goodbye. She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Goodbye. You think this is over? You think I'm going to rot in here while you live your perfect little life? I don't think anything, I said, my voice steady. I'm done thinking about you. I'm done letting you control my life. You win nothing by holding on to this hatred. She leaned forward, her eyes burning with a cold fury. You think you're so strong, don't you? You think you've won, but you're just as broken as I am. You just hide it better. Maybe, I said. But I'm not the one sitting in a prison cell, consumed by bitterness. I'm not the one who destroyed everything I loved because I couldn't let go of the past. She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't let her. I came here to tell you that I forgive you, I said. Not because you deserve it. Not because it makes what you did okay. But because I need to let go. For my own sake. She stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief. Forgive me after everything I did. Forgiveness isn't for you, I said. It's for me. It's the only way I can move on. I stood up to leave. Her voice stopped me at the door. You're naive, she said. You think you can just walk away from all of this. You think the past doesn't matter. I turned to look at her, a sad smile on my face. The past matters. But it doesn't have to define me. I walked out of the prison and never looked back. The years passed. I built a life I was proud of. A life that was mine and mine alone. I found love with a man who saw me for who I was, scars and all. I adopted a dog, a scruffy little terrier who followed me everywhere, and slept at the foot of my bed. I planted that garden my mother had talked about, and every spring I watched the flowers bloom. I still thought about Leo and my aunt sometimes. The betrayal, the pain, the years I had lost. But the memories no longer hurt the way they used to. They were just part of my story. A chapter one had closed. One night, I was sitting on my porch, watching the sunset, when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it, expecting the worst. Just wanted you to know, I'm doing okay. I'm clean. I have a job. I'm trying to be a better person. I know you'll never trust me, and I don't expect you to. But I wanted to say thanks. For letting me go. For giving me a chance to start over. I stared at the text for a long moment. The old anger flickered to life, but it was faint, distant. It didn't have the power it used to. I typed back a single word. Goodbye. I blocked the number and put down my phone. The sunset was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, beautiful and fleeting. I watched it until the colors faded into the blue of twilight. I went back inside and made myself a cup of tea. My dog curled up at my feet. And the house was quiet and warm. I didn't have the answers to everything. I didn't know if Leo would truly change, or if my aunt would ever find peace. But I knew, with a certainty that came from years of struggle, that I was free. The war was over. I had finally won. Not by destroying my enemies, but by building something better for myself. A life worth living. A future worth fighting for. And in the end, that was enough.